The idea of getting an interior designer into your home is an idea that most of us perhaps dream of, but believe perhaps that it's a luxury for the rich and the famous. Well, not anymore. Nina KATI is an experienced interior designer and feng shui practitioner and is based in Rathgormack, County Waterford. Today we've come to the home of Brendan and Kathleen Hogg to see how Nina helped them transform a pretty ordinary bathroom into a fantastic, fabulous haven of peace and tranquility. Nina, what exactly is it that you do?
I'm an interior designer and a feng shui practitioner, so I integrate the principles of interior design and feng shui to create a more harmonious and balanced environment.
Well, now, some people, when they think of interior designers, they have a fear, I think, of employing them on several levels. First of all, they're worried about the cost, which we'll get to. But the other thing is that they think an interior designer is going to come into their home, do something entirely suited to the designer, and then leave, and they're left with something very modern or something that they don't particularly like, or that they don't want. So that's not the case, though, is it?
No, that's a misconception. Really, what interior designers do is they liaise directly with the client to establish what their needs and preferences are, and find out what their tastes are as well. And the client works together with the designer, and the designer works with the client to ensure that they achieve what it is they're setting out to do.
So the homeowner or the client is very much involved in the process. It's not just, unless somebody gives you carte blanche and says do what you like, but
yes,
generally
it's very rare.
speaking,
I mean, in most circumstances, most clients actually they give you a brief and they tell you exactly what they want. It's at that point then that you discuss things in much more detail and cover things like health and safety and the proportion and the shapes and the colour schemes and so on, you know, to suit the client, and obviously discuss ideas so that way there's a rapport that builds up between the client and the designer so that they can meet their needs and tastes and preferences.
But for the uninitiated, tell us about feng shui very briefly.
Well, feng shui is about creating a balanced and harmonious environment. It's also about respecting nature and, you know, using natural products. So feng shui actually brings another dimension to interior design. It's also about things like not placing seating in the wrong places, that you have your back to a door, or that you find yourself with a confrontational arrangement in a room. So feng shui is all about pulling people together within the interior, as well as placing things carefully, so that the energy flows much more smoothly, and so that, you know, people have a much more a more sensual environment, if you like, and they feel more comfortable and more at home in that environment.
And talking about sensual environments and feeling at home and the relaxation, we are in a perfect example of that right now. Now, this is a magnificent example of what you do. This was and is a bathroom, but it was a very ordinary
it was,
bathroom,
yes.
to say the least, just practical.
An ordinary bath, an ordinary sink, and a set-into vanity unit. It was actually quite dated, and the client was ready to rebuild the room and start afresh.
Now, anyone can put in a jacuzzi bath because but it's the little things that are absolutely magnificent. Tell me about the shell feature that's in the floor.
Well, that was actually designed because it's very, very important in any interior, but particularly one where you're sitting looking at the scheme, which is exactly what one would be doing in the jacuzzi bath relaxing, is that you have something to see no matter where you turn to within the room. And so we decided to put in some extra little features and small touches that would really set the scheme off and pull everything together. So it was precision planned. A lot of detail was put into the scheme to ensure that everybody had something that would, you know, thrill them in some way. So a floor feature was put in, yes, basically to add just that, you know, tiny touch of imagination and flair to the scheme.
Now, also, I know there's been a lot of the clients and the clients' families' personalities stamped in this bathroom in various ways.
Very much so, yes. They're a very creative family. Their daughter is in fact a sculptor, so we asked her to specially commission a piece to place on a plinth that would be on display in the room. And the husband is in fact involved with technical drawing and carpentry and woodwork, so he actually partook in the scheme and implemented an awful lot of the design, part of the scheme that we wanted to make from scratch. And on top of that, the wife is in fact very gifted with textiles, and so she put together the blind for the scheme.
Now, talking about the blind and of course the window, normally in a bathroom we're so used to seeing frosted glass or some way of keeping out the outside world. Here you've combined that lovely thing of light, plain glass, and yet you've still managed to retain the privacy.
Yes, absolutely. When I walked into the room at first, I actually couldn't see what was beyond the window, so I had to go into another room to see what was outside, because whatever we do in a room, the outside does have an influence, not just for light but for the colours that are outside as well. So without interfering with nature, we decided to create a very balanced and harmonious and very gentle scheme that was very serene and still, if you like, indoors, but bring nature indoors by using plants inside and bring the outdoors in by using clear glass. We also changed the design of the window for reasons of proportion and light as well. And that's what transformed the room most of all, I think, from what it was previously.
It's an amazing transformation, and it does feel extremely balanced and harmonious. And I noticed there are a lot of curves. You've used curves everywhere. That's all part of the feng shui.
It is, and also it was to reduce down the feeling of just a simple basic cube, which is the room was square, and the proportions were more or less exactly the same between the height of the ceiling and the width and length of the room. So we decided to introduce curves just to give the feng shui aspect some more definition, if you like, and to soften and make the scheme much more gentle.
Finally, Nina, I have to say there will be people watching this that will say, I would love Nina or somebody like Nina to come around, but is it way outside my budget?
No, no scheme is. People actually have the idea that interior designers and a jacuzzi bath and all these things are very expensive. In actual fact, everything can be done on a very reasonable budget. This was in fact quite expensive purely because we've used quite expensive materials, because the choice of bath was in fact dear, so we went the whole hog. But there's no need for that. One can make something out of nothing. It's just a question of having a little bit of imagination and creativity and the ability to put that together.
And indeed the courage to telephone you up and get you out.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Thank you very much indeed for showing us this. It's absolutely fabulous, and
Thank you.
I would imagine whatever it costs, as I said, that it's worth it at the end of the day, because it's something that you're going to do and hopefully have done for some time.
That's right, yeah. It is.
Nina, thank you very much indeed.
And thank you.
Well, thanks for that, Nicola. And what a transformation of a very small space. I think we'll have to go back to Nina in future programmes and see what you can do with other rooms in the house. Now to this week's competition, and Lloyd Cole plays at South Tramore on Friday, November 1st. We've got 4 tickets to give away to one person. All you've got to do is name any of Lloyd Cole's songs. Your answers, please, on a postcard to Waterford to date, care of WLRFM, George's Court in Waterford City, to reach us before next Wednesday. That's it from the programme. From myself, Liz Reddy, all the team here at Waterford to date at Waterford's newest pub, Baker Street. We'll see you next week.